What's up, humans, and welcome to a new Psicoactivo. Happy Tuesday, everybody. Sorry. This is a really special moment for me because I was already a guest on my next guest's show, and I was really excited for a while to speak to him. He has one of the channels that talk about pretty much the entire gamut of the phenomenon, and he is very strong on esotericism. He's had some wonderful conversations with Dr. Dean Radin, Peter Labenda, Nathaniel Gillis, and I'm really happy to hear him every time that he does a show that I'm very interested in. I've covered a bunch of his shows on my channel already, and he's also a finance executive, engineer, veteran, and science fiction and horror writer. And he has a wonderful YouTube channel called Through a Glass Darkly. I want you guys to please welcome Mr. Sean Patrick Hazlett to Psicoactivo. Welcome, Sean. How you doing, man?
Hey, Pavel. Thank you for inviting me. It's good to talk to you again. I really enjoyed it.
Fucking finally, bro. Fucking finally, bro.
You said, hey, you want to be on my show? I'm like, yeah. And then, like, I don't hear from you for like 2 months or something. And then you come back, I'm like, oh, yeah, it's that.
It's been so fucking hectic, because, the nature of what I do, it's just the daily news. And it's been really fucking hectic. So I do apologize for that, but we finally made it happen. So I want to start with first, if you might want to please tell the audience about your background, because I did a poor job there. I know that you are a veteran, but can you please tell the audience what your background is and how you got into these topics?
Yeah, so I'll try to, sometimes I go off on a long, like meandering answer. So
we got time. Don't worry, buddy. We got
super, super tight. I'll still keep it kind of tight because I don't think people want to hear too much about that. But originally from Wilmington, Delaware. Yes, when I grew up, Biden was my senator and other weird stuff like that. I went out to Stanford for my undergrad. I couldn't afford it. Like, my parents were both teachers. And I wanted to serve my country. So the military was definitely a huge option. So I had an ROTC scholarship. I studied electrical engineering and history. So I had 2 degrees undergrad. Whoa. So one was, again, I came from a middle-class background. You needed to justify, school of that cost. And history was because I was just interested in that sort of thing. When I graduated, I had I had served 5 years. The commitment was for 4, but then September 11th happened. So they put me on something called stop loss. And I'll go into it a little bit because there's a lot of like inside baseball on this. But when you're commissioned as a second lieutenant, you are selected by a branch. A branch is like armor, infantry, artillery, Chem Corps, all, military police, all that sort of stuff. So I was actually selected, and here's like the conspiracy theorists are going to go wild with it. That's great. Just go wild with it. I was assessed as a military intelligence officer. Okay. But with male, there's males and females in the military, obviously, but a lot of the males, what they'll do is rather than go directly into military intelligence, they send you to a combat arms branch, right? And so it's something called the branch detail program. So they sent me to armor. So I did tanks and all that stuff, but they sent me to probably the best place that you could send a quote unquote future military intelligence officer, which I never became. That's part of the story too. Which was the National Training Center in Fort Irwin, California. So I know if you went down to Contact in the Desert, Pavel, you would have been in the vicinity. It's still like millions of square kilometers out there. But if you remember where Barstow is, if you pass Barstow, anything, if you go to Barstow, maybe
it's in Palm Springs.
No, it's not in Palm Springs, but it's in that kind of general Southern California desert area. Right?
Okay.
But for people who know where Barstow is, if you were to go to Barstow, which is like the butt end of the earth, you go to Barstow and then you drive 40 miles into the desert. And that's basically where I was. And just north of it was China Lake Naval Weapons Center, where they would drop, bombs and all sorts of stuff when they're testing. So what I did there was I became an expert on Soviet doctrine and tactics because, again, when I first started, this was before 9/11, so we were still focused on peer-to-peer combat or near-peer competitor combat. So I was part of an organization called the Op 4, so opposing forces. And our goal was to just beat the piss out of every unit that was sent out there in these large war games of 5,000 people, um, in an area that was roughly 1,000 square miles, roughly the size of the state of Rhode Island. And I knew that place, every nook and cranny, like the back of my hand. And that was the point, to expose weakness in the US military so that they could shore it up and get better. So I was about to get out 4 years in, and September 11th had happened, and what the military saw with me was, oh, he's military intelligence. I had no training, nothing, but they put all military intelligence personnel on stop loss, which means they couldn't leave. And it was indefinite at first. Like my
Whoa.
officer record briefs had my end date at December 2031. And I was just like, I felt like I'm like, I mean, I didn't take it too seriously, but I was like, if this is real, like I am literally a slave, like literally a slave. And so this was when I was put on stop loss. It was like February 2002. So I knew we were going to invade Iraq. Like I knew that was in the plans and all that stuff. So rather than, of course, the Army being a big bureaucracy, I kind of called them up and, like, at that point in my career, I would have had to go to this thing called the advanced course. So I would have had to go to the famous, I think Kurt Metzger calls it Fort Haktua, but it's Fort Huachuca.
Huachuca. Yeah.
Yeah, that would have been my
Tua.
next. Yeah, that would have been my next assignment. Like I would have had to go there to learn how to do all this military intelligence stuff. So anyway, I called him up, and it's like, yeah, 18 months. I'm like, you're keeping me here so that to do nothing. It was like hurry up and wait, but it didn't make any sense. So I just waited it out, and then after a year, I just had to spend an extra year in, still at Fort Irwin, no military intelligence training. They did make me get a top secret SCI clearance, so I'm like, okay, I'll just get that. But I never did anything with it. Was never exposed to TSSCI information.
Okay.
So anyway, I finally get out, go to business school, and also go to the Kennedy School of Government. While at the Kennedy School of Government, I got a thesis advisor whose name was Dr. Ash Carter. 8 years later, he became Obama's Secretary of Defense. But while I was there, I did my master's thesis on the Iran problem, like the nuclear weapons program. And you could still find it
which I think is fucking premonitory of sorts that you did that, and then we're going through that right now. What was that experience like? I would like to hear, and the audience would also like to hear, what was that experience like to writing that and now everything that's going on right now?
Yeah, so I kind of mentioned something like this on Camp Gagnon, on Mark Gagnon's podcast. I think it's actually airing while we're recording this. And he said, well, like he kind of pushed back on it, and I agreed with the pushback. Like, this is one of those situations where it could be either or. You could argue that, like, look, this thing was always going to be a problem. It's been bubbling. Like Netanyahu's been screaming about it since 1985. It was bound to happen at some point. And you know what? Like, yeah, that's fair pushback. On the other hand, and again, I don't know what the answer to this is. Like anybody can convince me either way. I'm just laying out the facts. There have been a lot of instances in my life, particularly on the production of either creative work or projects like this, that subsequently in some way came true. So a crazier version of that would be, and you could probably pull it up, Pavel, so you can see it. Just type in my name, go comma swarm, SWARM, and then Vice, as in Vice Media. So I wrote a short story sometime in 14 or
Oh,
sorry.
very interesting. Let me put it on screen because this is it right here, right?
Yeah, if you had that reaction, yeah, that's definitely it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And
So
it has your name on it. Yeah.
so there
December
was
8th,
a
2017. That was right about at around the time the New York Times article came out.
oh, the UFO article you're talking about?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so this was about the Ukraine war.
Okay.
So it was about the use of drones in 20, at the time the Russians were fighting the Ukrainians in 2014 in like the Donbass and in that region. But this kind of went through foresaw the drone like extensive drone use in a little bit of a different way that I haven't seen used yet, right? Where these are kind of anti like land-based artillery delivered anti-personnel mobile mines, right? So these mines that literally chase you, but they're delivered on artillery, right? So they're just fired into a location, they come out down on parachutes, and then they chase you until you're dead. But this was kind of foresaw U.S. special forces inside Ukraine fighting Russians. I'm not saying that there are or aren't U.S. special forces or special ops in Ukraine fighting or at any point, but I think it's safe to say there was probably definitely something like that happening.
Yep.
But again, this was written in sometime either in 2017 or before 2017 for it to appear in Vice at that time. So that's one example. I also had an anthology that came out in 2020. It's published in 2020, probably conceived in 2018, about called Weird World War III, and it was short stories. I was an anthologist,
Mhm.
so I was an editor. Put together a bunch of short stories about a war between the U.S. and Russia. Again, this is all before February 22nd, 2022, when that whole conflict kicked off. So, was it a coincidence? Maybe. Was it precognitive? Maybe. The audience is just going to have to decide.
Yeah. And the reason I ask you for your background is because you have a very unique perspective on what's going on with the whole topic of UFOs and Psi and all that. And I do appreciate a different perspectives on this because we are currently under like a circle jerk sort of reporting of this, and we've been on it for a while. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm fairly new to this. I've been in this for 3 years only, and I already recognize that that is actually happening, which is one of the main reasons why I have sort of separated myself from a lot of those people because I don't feel confident enough uh, being close to them. And whenever I want to report on something that they don't like, I just want to be free to do that. And that's probably the main reason why I've never had Lou Elizondo on the show. I've never had Chris Mellon on the show, and I've had opportunities to have them, but I sort of know that they're bullshitting people in many things, and they have their own agenda. And I've been attacked for this, but I don't give a shit really because the important thing of this, I think, is people like, for example, David Grush, Matthew Brown, Dylan Borland. They're not bad people. They're good people. And I think that they're like suffering the consequences of this psychological operation because they stepped out of line for everybody who was following the instructions of the playbook. And that's probably about the only reason why I do support those three guys specifically. But I understand that it's just like easy to see when you see Lou, who's opening up a bar, and you see people like Jake Barber, who are not going through any problems really. They're like basically swimming in money. And you see people like Dylan and Matthew going through it and getting the doors shut in their face constantly because they are basically treated as snitches. Um, that's like for me, those are the guys that I think should be supported in some way, even though they may not have the truth really. They're just trying to blow the whistle, but they can't even really do that because the majority of them just have like a little piece of the puzzle. They can't really blow the whistle on anything really.
So a
And
data point
that's why I
about
appreciate. Yeah, tell me.
a data point about Jake Barber. Okay, I'm going to try to deliver this in as objective a fashion as possible. Okay, so I did an interview with someone, and I got his name wrong on the Julian Dory podcast. So I'll get it right now. His name's Scott Guerin. Okay, Scott Guerin was PJ, so like Air Force Special Ops, right? These are the guys that rescue down pilots. Okay, and one of his assignments, he taught scuba school down in the Florida Keys with a lot of special ops types. So he had a close eye on the entire pipeline of PJ candidates and anybody who took part in that program. During the time that Barber would have gone through that particular training, Scott Guerin said, I never saw him. He was not there at the time he was supposed to have been there. So take that with what you will, right? But I highly suspect he's like a sheep-dipped asset. Did the stuff that he went through, is that real? I don't know. I've never reached out to him. I haven't heard his side of the story, but I'm highly suspicious of it.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, I do talk to him occasionally, and something that is very evident in our back and forth is I made it very specific from the beginning that I told him I don't fully believe what you're saying publicly. I just want to make that clear. And often he goes like, "What am I lying about?" And I'm like, "Dude, it's pretty clear
That's
that
the
you
point.
come from one of the aerospace companies. It's pretty clear that you come from there. You've hinted at it, so it's pretty clear that you're not telling the entire truth." I'm not saying that because this is something that I've always said about him. He introduced his kids to a lot of people in ufology, and if you're like one of the bad guys, or you're trying to like, you know, do something bad to the community, or I don't think that you would go around and introduce your children to people. That's something that doesn't add up to somebody who's like
Unless
special
you're a
ops
psychopath.
or
If you were a
yeah,
psychopath, you would
unless
absolutely. Again, I'm
that's
not saying
true.
he's a psychopath. I'm just
I
saying,
don't
like,
think he is, to be honest with you.
yeah.
Because
I have I have no reason to suspect anything.
but
Yeah.
I've told him, I know that you're not telling the truth about a lot. So if you don't like me saying that, I'm sorry, but it's pretty evident that you're not. And I still think you're a good guy. Like you don't strike me as somebody who's like actively trying to do evil shit or something like that. I do find it weird that there is this sort of religious sort of connotation to his side of things. Like there's people in high positions of government, even in the cabinet, who think that the phenomenon is completely spiritual and religious specifically. I know that it's probably spiritual in many instances, but I also think that the religious connotation is just interpretation from those times. I don't know if you agree there.
Yeah, I think it's just when people saw angels and demons, they saw NHI. Now, what are the NHI? Are they ETs? I would say with high confidence, not high confidence, but I would say it's highly likely that they're not ETs. And the reason I say highly likely is because that's been the dominant narrative for the past 80 years. That's what they want you to believe. Now, what they
Yep.
want you to believe is that, well, actually, I don't, there's so much noise in this topic that one technique that you have to use to separate signal from noise is you have to focus on what they don't say, right? You're familiar with the story about the bomber. I don't know, it was a B-17 bomber, maybe, or B-25 bomber, B-29, something like that. When we were bombing Japan during World War II, right? Like these bombers would return, and the engineers would reinforce all the areas that were hit. And there was some Columbia professor who had, now it's a fairly obvious insight, but back then it wasn't, was that like we shouldn't be reinforcing and patching up the stuff that's consistently been hit. We should be reinforcing and building up the stuff that hasn't, like the stuff that continuously comes back, right? Because the reason it came back is those areas weren't hit, right? So like we never saw these struts like damaged when they come back. So we need to reinforce the struts because obviously when they're hit, the whole thing crashes. So when you're looking at the, this whole phenomenology problem, there's several things that, again, I can't say for certain, but just from looking at it from the outside, there's certain structural things that have happened over the past 80 years. Number one, it's UFOs, right? Number two, cryptology is separate from hauntology, which is separate from UFOs. And then the one thing that you don't hear anything, or you hear less about, is kind of human potential. Okay.
Psi phenomena.
So, right. So what I think this is about is it's about psi phenomena. It's about human potential and what human beings can do. And if people are awakened, it reduces the power of existing governmental structures. So if you notice, most of the stuff that they're talking about, right, they're not emphasizing remote viewing, right? They're not emphasizing remote influencing, heaven forbid if they did that, right? They're avoiding the entire topic of human potential altogether. So I think there's a nugget of wisdom somewhere in there. The kind of other things that they're the silo thing, right? The fact that these silos exist means that there should not be any silos. All this stuff is interrelated. Near-death experiences, ET phenomena,
Apparitions.
UFOs, apparitions. There's something related to all that, and I don't think these non-human intelligences could be from somewhere else. I don't think that's the case, but I don't want to completely rule it out. But what gives me confidence that we can pretty much dismiss a lot of that is the fact that it was pushed so heavily, even as part of like this opposite or opposing narrative to kind of the official. There's nothing out there. We're, totally fine. And I'm not saying there's nothing out there. There's most certainly stuff out there, but I think there's a control system that we've only been able to see hints of until recently. So the whole, and I sound like a crazy conspiracy theorist, but like the whole Epstein thing, this is connected to the Epstein thing, right? Aspects of it. And I don't mean directly. I just mean that if you look at kind of billionaires and things like that, a commonality of them is they're all psychopaths, right? So if you have a system of psychopaths, how do you maintain control over the psychopaths? Well, you have to compromise them. So there are systematic efforts at compromise throughout the planet, particularly with top elites, right? So like which women got to be famous actresses? Well, many of them were the ones that slept with Harvey Weinstein. Those who didn't become famous actresses. Maybe some of them did, but like there are lots of sick and twisted control mechanisms that our society uses to get what it wants. Apparently, there hasn't been a top rap song in the top 40 since we snuffed out USAID, right? So, like, what was the government trying to do? Were they trying to like inject more violence into Black communities by, providing more violent, gangster rap and things like that? Yeah. I think the answer is yes, absolutely. Were. I mean, they CIA funded drug operations, used it as an operation to fund the Iran Contra scandal. So what else are they doing?
Oh, well, the CIA has a history of creating militias all throughout Central and South America that have destabilized every country systematically. And that is part, I think, of the social engineering of it all, really.
Right.
And they've done a bunch of things,
I mean,
right?
you just saw it here. You saw it here 3 days ago with Patriot Front, right? Have you ever seen a white supremacist organization marching openly with Washington, D.C. without being doxxed without the media asking questions about funding sources and like tracing that. No, totally fine. Totally fine. Look at the Nazis marching around, right? Like that's fake. Like a lot of the stuff that we see is fake. BLM was fake, right? It's like everybody's going to wear masks. Everybody's going to wear. You can't go to grandma's funeral because you'll get the the disease. Oh wait. Let's drop everything. Feel free to go to these massive protests. Burn things down, make people feel unsafe, right? Like that was an op. January 6th, 100% that was an op, right?
Yeah.
Let's try to just get the crazier elements of the population to commit a crime so that we can imprison them and reduce any internal discourse. Oklahoma City. Was that an inside job? I can come up with a narrative.
We can
that
go.
That doesn't mean
we can
it was.
go on and
That doesn't
on,
mean
bro.
it was. Right.
Yeah, we can go on and on.
The reality you
that.
see is not the reality that exists. That's my only point.
No. Yeah, and they've been managing it for longer than 80 years, I would tell you. This is where I think it gets a little dark, and I do want to talk about this because you mentioned Epstein. There's a lot of indication in some of the files that were released that Epstein was very interested in psi phenomena. There's a 1 hour Zoom conversation he had with Dr. Dean Radin. There are mentions of Dr. Dan Hennessy Powell, Dr. Julia Mosrich. Why do you think that somebody like Epstein was interested in that? And do you think it goes back to the old Hermeticism ages and it's connected to that up until today?
Yeah, I think it's connected. And I think he was interested in that information for the same reason he was interested in Stanley Pon and cold fusion, right? For the same reason that Ghislaine Maxwell's father owned Pergamon Press. So what this whole op is doing, and for the same reason he set up in New Mexico, just outside Los Alamos Labs at the very end of the Cold War, when you have all these scientists with all this knowledge, but nothing to do with it, right? So what he appears to, his function was not only to help control and compromise elites, but also to stifle scientific ideas and information that the powers that be, whoever they are, do not want the masses to be aware of, right? So in the files, he openly brags about destroying Stanley Pons and kind of cutting off cold fusion. So the reason was likely talking to these people is trying to get a sense for what's out in the open right now, and then either steer it away from that or provide that intelligence to whoever's true minders are. But again, this is about like denying human potential.
Yeah. I think he was probably connected to the oldest families, right? Rothschilds, Rockefeller,
Rothschilds,
all that, right?
According to his own admission, right? Does that mean he act? Well, no, actually, I think there were emails between him and some of the Rothschild family. So yeah. So the loose sense that what I'm seeing is kind of the nobility never gave up control, and all of these like nation states and systems are just provide the illusion to the masses that they aren't in control, right? And they've long since been forgotten about. But like the Rothschilds are just an example of that sort of thing. So I don't know what that system behind the curtain looks like, but it's not what we see. Like elections are fake, right? And you can also, if you look at some of your analytics on YouTube, you can sometimes detect what the regime behind the curtain cares about, right? Like you could look at your engagement graphs, which is typically kind of declining, right? Like for everybody, like as somebody starts watching, the percentage still engaged goes down over time. But sometimes you'll see a weirdly unnatural spike where it just goes from like 30% to 98% and back down in like a minute. And if you ever go back and observe what your guests are saying during those periods, sometimes they'll say something that you missed and you're like, holy shit, no wonder like NSA must have some keyword search for this. I'll give you an example. So Christopher Robinson who, for whatever reason, the powers that be do not want you to know about him. Like my episodes do not perform well when I interview him, right? And there's no reason. The only reason why is he worked closely with MI5 and MI6. He's a precognitive dreamer and saw the Lockerbie bombing before it happened, and demanded that he put what he saw in an affidavit. Because it was weighing on his conscience. And of course, the event happened as he predicted. So one of the things he said had nothing to do with that, because again, he was working closely with MI5 and MI6. He was just like, they had the capability to do this and they had the capability to do that, and they could vote on somebody else's behalf. That's where it spiked.
Yeah. What, dude? This reminds me of some of the reports that I've been tracking. I don't know if you recall that Lou and Mellon sort of allude to a guy from the Department of Energy who passed away. His name is Kevin Childress.
Mm-hmm.
What I researched about this guy, I spoke to somebody who was his friend, and they were really pissed off at the way that his passing was treated, because according to what he was talking to Kevin about, he was about to come out to expose the Department of Energy's and inclusion of psi phenomena in their entire portfolio. And he said that people from the Department of Energy, even generals who are close to that, confidently believe that channeling is real, and they use it constantly in classified work. I don't know what you think about that, because I thought that was really interesting, and it goes hand in hand with what you say about them wanting to just cover everything related to psi phenomena, and I found that really interesting. What do you think about that?
So from the very beginning, they've been using channeling, right? So, I mean, you're definitely familiar with Andrea Puharich and
Oh
the
yeah,
Nine,
oh
right?
yeah,
And that's tied all the way to like most of like everybody in that original channeling group was 1 degree of separation from Lee Harvey Oswald in the JFK assassination, right? So, is there some deep, well-planned conspiracy by humans that did this? Maybe, but I doubt it. There's something that's operating on a level above that. Now, what does that mean? I have no idea. It could be NHI in control, or it could just be that there's just another layer of reality where all these things are related and somehow coordinated in ways that our tiny monkey brains can't even possibly conceive of, right? But yeah, I'm not surprised by that at all. But the reason that they can't come out publicly is because it would freak people out. Like, are you being possessed by demons? And by
what
the
do you
way,
think? Yeah, tell me.
I had a long dinner with this guy. His name is Mark Stavish, and he wrote this book called Egregores. He runs the Institute for Hermetic Studies. Okay,
Okay.
in I think it's in Wyoming, Pennsylvania. And what he said is that, like, there are people who use channeling, like Tibetan monks. They have oracles. And he said that those people know that because you're allowing something in your body, you're going to wear it out a lot faster. So they have extremely short lives. Same thing with Catholic exorcists, right? Because they're dealing with, exercising people and things like that. They suffer from contagion and also have short lives. So I wouldn't be surprised. I haven't heard anything since kind of the experiments with the Nine that they continue to do that, but I think that just means it's more secret. I would not be surprised, is all I'm saying. But I haven't heard any. Nobody's told me that they do these things, at least recently. But I wouldn't be surprised.
That's funny because I've spoken about this before. My godfather, he used to run with an exorcist in Jalisco for about 15 to 20 years. And when we talked about it the first time, it was fairly recently. He told me that he died in his 50s. He died kind of young, and that it wore him out pretty
Yeah,
significantly. So that tracks, man. That's
Yeah,
crazy.
that's exactly what he said. He didn't say the thing about. He said the thing about contagion elsewhere. Like when you're doing exorcisms, you have to be like aware of contagion. But it was more of the energies that you're dealing with. They just wear you out. They wear your physical body out.
Yeah, that's crazy. What do you think needs to happen in order to get the stigma out of these topics of psi and the more paranormal, which is a fucking dumb word.
Go dark and do it on your own. Don't tell people what you're doing. Just figure it out. You're not gonna. The government's not gonna tell you. Like they're not. They have zero incentive to tell you. I'll give you an example. So I went to this disclosure forum. Okay,
Oh, you were
and
there.
yeah, I was there. But I wore like really. I shouldn't say inappropriate, but like I wore like a t-shirt. Like I did not dress as people are expected to dress intentionally, so I wouldn't be caught in the like camera stuff. Right? They'd be like, "Whoa,
Yep.
he's wearing bright blue shirt. Like that's not. Stay away from him. Let's not." But as I was sitting there, my friend taps me on the shoulder. He's sitting to my left, and he's like, "There's a woman sitting behind you, and she just doesn't belong here." So anyway, during a break, we both stood up, and he immediately turns around. He says, "Like, hi, my name's Mike. How you doing?" And she was like, it was like a bear just like showed up at her doorstep, and she was like visibly rattled. Okay,
Hmm.
and and she kind of like nervously, they start talking and nervously says something like, I don't think the public, or he just said, hi, my name's Mike, what's your name? And she says, I can't remember the name. And he's like, oh, well, like, what makes you interested in this topic? And she's like, I'm an interested member of the public. I mean, she didn't say it that
Whoa.
way. She's just like, I'm an interested member of the public. Like, who says that? Like,
Yeah.
so it's just like, yeah, she either worked for the government, 99.9% chance, or she was something else. I don't
Yeah.
know.
We had a
But
weird experience with Chris Ramsey at Contact that it was kind of strange because he still claims that we stumbled upon a hybrid because she started talking about um, you know, being a hybrid, and she said that she worked on quantum technology and that she was an intuitive asset, and it was a really strange conversation that they had, and I was just there, right there, and she had the same features that you would expect from a quote unquote hybrid. She was like really tall,
tall, blonde hair,
wide.
blue eyes.
Yes,
That
yes.
you just
It was
described the person that was sitting behind me. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a really strange interaction. That's funny.
But my intuition said it was FBI. That was my intuition. Just because it was just CIA, like they would train their people a little bit better than to say, I'm an interested member of the public. Right? That's like straight out of like somebody's just memorizing some field manual somewhere. Like it's very FBI like, right? CIA, they'd be like, I was kind of interested in the topic. The 2017 newspaper article was kind of like, I just wanted to see. I was just kind of like walking around the street, wanted to, come in and see what this was all about. It would be like something really anodyne but natural. But this was like, who says I'm an interested member of the public?
um, you've had your Gianni on your show multiple times, right? Jason Giorgiani, the philosopher.
Yeah, just twice. Yeah.
Yeah, twice. Okay, so he has interesting ideas about this whole topic, specifically about the Nordics. He thinks that they're human, but they're potentially from a breakaway civilization. Um, I wanted to ask you about this talk about species and all that stuff. That you don't think they're extraterrestrial, but people have reported on the Greys for decades. People have reported on the Nordics for a long time too. What do you think those are, though? In your based on what you've spoken to people about and in your experience.
So the thing about Giorgiani is the guy's a brilliant guy, and he has an extremely intriguing thesis about what all this is, which is entirely unfalsifiable, right? Like I can't prove it's not true, right? But he has extremely high conviction in the narrative. And
Yeah.
I don't know why, right? Um, that doesn't mean it's not true. It doesn't mean it's not real. I'm on the, like, I think it's interesting, and I think people should make up their own minds in terms of what,
You think?
yeah, in terms of what I think. I'm still on the fence, right? Because there are enough reports that whatever they are is real, right? And I kind of am just down to possibilities. So think of like a breakaway civilization. There are, I think there were like six major extinction events in Earth's that we know of in Earth's history. Major, there are like minor ones too. And the species that tend to survive are the ones that go underground, right? Or like burrowing species. So you can imagine a like our current crop of psychopathic billionaires and trillionaire going underground during an apocalypse, and those are the people that survive and preserve knowledge. So the worst of us, literally, right, are the ones that survive. So it is possible that they were part of a prior civilization, and if they have psychopathic tendencies, of course they would rebuild civilization in a way that where they retained all this advanced knowledge and only gradually dripped it out so that they can enslave people. So it tracks from like a human behavior standpoint, but it's it's hard to tell. Then there's also kind of the future, like the time traveling element. If you were to develop anti-gravity, right, you would have all sorts of mind bending effects with time and things like that that we're probably only beginning to understand, if not a physics that is so completely alien that we're so far away from it that it'll take us 1,000 years to figure it out. It could be something like that, where these people are, and that's kind of where the Giorgiani thing is. They're kind of this timeless group of psychopaths, right?
Yeah.
That have figured out anti-gravity and because he is right, like an anti-gravitic craft is a time machine, right? Literally a
Essentially,
time
yeah.
machine.
Yeah.
So that's a possibility. From like them being from like some other planet, I think is extremely low, right? It's
Yeah.
possible. It's possible, but it's not plausible. And the common argument for that is, um, I can already hear the counter argument, but the common argument is life developed independently on all these worlds. Like you would expect to see wildly different character. Why are you seeing like the same star form that is everywhere? Well, the counter argument would be, well, panspermia, and maybe we were seeded by a von Neumann machine, right? And we're just kind of the next stage of evolution is AI, and we're just the kind of pathway to that. Who knows, right? So um, another aspect is that there's some other life form on the planet that is a mimic. This is kind of the Nathaniel Gillis sort of uh, thing. Now, they might be non-human, or they could be, as he puts it, some species of sorcerer, right? So again, going back to the ancient past, these people just have more knowledge than we do and are able to propagate through an alternative means. I don't pretend to know what the answer to that is, but I think I'm more kind of a Keelian, or like I think Jacques Vallée kind of has it. There's just, we have a limited number of senses, and there are things that we can barely perceive that are all around us at all times, and the nature of reality is very, very strange. So I just interviewed Dr. Simeon Hein, who I've been trying to talk to for a very, very long time, and he posits that there's a fifth state of matter called it's not condensed matter, but it's just a fifth matter that's more stable than the fourth state of matter, which is plasma, and that these things that we're seeing are just different life forms that are part of, call it a shadow biome, that's all around us. So he had asked, he was at a conference once and somebody from the DOE approached him, and he kind of asked, my research, is any of it wrong? And they're like, no, you're. So it's like an open secret, like in the government, it's an open secret that this stuff is real. It's like, yeah, obviously, duh, duh,
Yeah.
but they can't talk about it because it's all classified. Right.
Yeah.
But he also said, like, just be careful. Like, if you ever see like ball lightning or an orb that's approaching you, he's like, just get away from it, because when those things collapse, when their structure collapses, there's an Air Force report that was out in like the 60s or something like that, that said that when those things collapses, right, it collapses inward, but creates, equal and opposite force, and has the strength of about 10 grenades. So a lot of people have gotten horribly wounded or harmed by being around these things when they collapse. So anyway, they're already starting the, like Avi Loeb with the UAP advisory. Ignore the past, don't to the past, because we're going to use the University of Colorado again, and they're going to come up with another bullshit report that lies about everything, right? Like you saw that, right? There's the Burke's report.
We saw, well, Gerb is my friend. He was there when.
Oh, you see the op they created just for him? That was just for him. Did you notice that?
Yeah.
Props to him for getting their attention.
Oh,
dude,
that
was just for him, man.
Dude, he was like, I had no idea this was gonna happen. It dropped in my lap, and I did the best I could. And I'm like, you did well, dude. Like, it was very clear that because people are noticing. Like yesterday, fucking Eric Davis was calling him Sammy Gerb. I mean, they know who he is. They know what he's doing, and they obviously want to control him in some way because he's getting out of their hands. He's getting out of their control. I don't think they'll be able to, because if I'm honest with you, I think that guy, he seems like there's something personal in this for him. Like some of his friends were either hurt or something by these people, and it seems like that, so I don't think that they're going to be able to control him. But I do want to ask you though, because he's on a train.
By the way, did you read did you skim the Burke's paper? I didn't read it. I skimmed it. Did you skim it?
No.
I want to see what the new swamp gas is. So Shermer sent it around, right? Like the skeptic Shermer.
Yeah.
Who's also on the advisory council.
Yes.
Kind of interesting. So the new swamp gas is dusty plasma. So dusty plasma is the new swamp gas. And guess what university that did the research? The University of Colorado Boulder, which is the same place the Condon report was. That's why I don't want you to remember any history. Like, these are not the droids you're looking for.
And it's the same place where Jacobo Greenberg was seen the last time, in Boulder as well. So, those are the reports.
There's something to that. Look, they're just doing, like, I'm not trying to make it personal. These guys are just doing their jobs.
Right? Yeah. I mean, I don't have anything against them. It's just very funny that over time, over decades even, people like Andrea Puharich, Itzhak Bentov, Jacobo were all like on the verge of something or discovered something, and suddenly they just like that, and no questions asked. It's a mystery. It's a mysterious case. In Jacobo's case, it's a cold case, but no explanation, no context, nothing. Just boom, because they were onto something, I believe. Do you agree?
Of course they were onto something.
Yeah.
Have you looked at any Steve Mira's research too?
A little bit, yeah. I'm gonna be honest with you. I was trying to look into the Nazca tridactyls and the research that he did on them. It's something that it just didn't fit with me a little bit, and I mistakenly started just ignoring him. But it was a mistake on my part, because he's clearly very brilliant.
The Nazca through line with him. I'm not even aware of like that aspect of his research. So that's what, because I kind of, there's something there, but there's so much bullshit around it
Yeah.
that like that's how you can tell there's a there, but it's also very easy to get pulled into.
That's why I left the case, man. You should see my inbox. Like when I started dissenting even a little bit, because I started like curious as anybody. I'm like, there might be something to this. And I interviewed a bunch of people who are involved in the case. I caught red-handed a couple of them. One of them actually told me that there was smuggling involved between Peru and Mexico, and that authorities were involved. And that was pretty big. Nobody caught it. And when I started dissenting a little bit, like I started getting attacked by both sides. And people were saying that I was Mexican intelligence and really stupid shit like that. And I was like, I'm out. Fuck these people. I'm not gonna even entertain this. I got a lot of stuff to do.
Well, it's kayfabe, right? You control both sides. That's why you get attacked by both sides.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think without having any data to support it, I think most people in this topic, particularly with the widest reach, are compromised in some way. Right. The bigger the reach, the more likely there's some compromise involved, whether wittingly or unwittingly. Right. I actually tried to. I just got a Anthropic description, and it is amazing. But I tried to have it systematically see if there were any signals or flags across all the YouTube channels in the space. So it like pulled together all the YouTube channels. It took me a while to kind of get it to do right, but pulled about 3,200 channels. But like the signals that it was getting were not like that, were not that strong, if at all, right? So some of the usual suspects, which I'm not gonna get you into trouble by mentioning who the usual
We know their
suspects.
names. We know their names.
Yeah, and I mean, there's some I know for a fact are astroturf. Like I know there's one for a fact it is astroturfed. I'm happy to tell you offline, but I'm not gonna. I'm not. I don't want to get. I don't want to get into that like
Back and
UFO
forth.
drama cycle.
No, fuck
Right.
that. Me
I'm
neither.
just. I report. You decide. That's my approach. There's stuff I think is true. Stuff I don't think is true. But I'm never gonna say I 100% know it's this, because there's always, you can get set up pretty easy. Like Gerb, that was a straight up setup. There's no
Yeah.
doubt in my mind he was set
Yeah.
up. Now that reduces, or that increases my confidence that he's not part of the op, right?
Yep.
But that doesn't mean he's not, right? He might be like, that would be a really, that's the problem. If you're an intelligent person, you can spin these things in your head, right? Like, they if they know that I know that they know that they know that I know that they know that I know, like you can get into this like recursive mimetic virus where you just start spinning in your head about who's there or not. Like, so the approach I've taken is like, I'll report, you decide. So I'll give you another example. That Tedesco brothers thing, that interview, fell right into my lap. That's an important data point. Why it fell right into my lap, I don't know. Okay. But it felt like someone came up to me at that event in DC and literally gave me their contact information. Like, and I appreciate them for doing it, but the audience needs to know that, right? I probably should have said it in my YouTube channel as well, but I will. I'll go back and say that. So there's a reason they want that story out. What's the reason? I don't know.
Man, it's kind of strange though, because they do really good work, the Tedescos.
They absolutely do.
Yeah, absolutely. But I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not implying
think-
that they're fake or anything like that. I want to be very clear. Like, they do very excellent work. There's just, my sense is that independent of the work they're doing and what their intentions are, someone in the government wants that story out there, or wants more exposure to that, whatever it is. Okay. So I found them to be very credible, very honest, very hardworking. But again, the government, maybe they are serious about some level of disclosure, and that's That's the avenue. I don't know what the motivation is. All I know is I don't know, and I don't know. I highly suspect that like that stuff never like everything that I have to do, I have to work like 50 times harder than everybody else. Like shit doesn't fall into my lap like that. So when it does, I notice it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
Elizondo, like I've been trying to talk, like get that guy on the podcast for you. Like unlike you, you're like I don't want to, like I want to talk. Like I'll talk to anybody. I talked to Mick West, and you know what? I found it
Yeah.
very valuable because it helped me to like debunk weird stuff that I've seen. Right? And you're like, okay, that's a bolide. Okay, that makes sense. A little flash out there in the over the horizon. That's a bolide. All right, that wasn't
Yeah.
weird at all. That's normal. Like it's helpful to talk to everybody because you get a fuller picture of what narratives are there, what's consistent, what's not consistent. So
You know what? When it comes to Lou, I would actually talk to Mick West. I actually don't think he's I think he's a gentleman. I've never seen him insult anybody. He's always been like pretty straightforward. He's a
yeah,
skeptic.
he's a good dude.
I'm okay with skeptics, you know.
Yeah.
There's the toxicity is what drives me away in general. That's the people that I choose not to talk to. I wouldn't talk to Lou because of all the toxicity surrounding him. And I just don't want to deal with that shit, you know, because I know that I'm critical of him and I know that there's like probably an op protecting that and
Well,
fighting
here's the thing.
against.
He won't talk to me. He hasn't like declined or anything. I just never, I try to reach out on social media and I never get a response. What does that tell you? Right?
Yeah.
Everything is a message. Now, the answer could be you only have 26,000 subscribers and you're not worth my time. That could be the answer, right?
Yeah.
So that's not to say that it isn't, but look, he's clearly a counterintelligence guy. He's trying to expose leaks, and then there's some strategic deception involved. Like, wasn't he involved in NAFO or whatever it was? Wasn't he running
I
those
think
guys?
so. He was who, Lou?
Yeah.
He was involved in CIFA, wasn't he?
What's CIFA?
It's the counterintelligence field operations, something like that. In
Oh
the
well,
early
yeah,
two thousands.
well, that's for sure. Like his entire career was in Army
Yeah.
counterintelligence.
Yeah.
So what makes you think that he's not doing that now? And again, there's no knock on him, right? He's got to feed his family
Well,
and all that stuff.
I think he is, though. I do think he is, you know?
Of course he is. That's what he's done.
Yeah.
Like you're
Yeah.
not gonna do that for 30 years and then come and like be like the guy that is opening up disclosure for everybody, right?
Yeah.
Like it just doesn't track. Look, I got no beef with that, right? Like there's a reason that you have counterintelligence. It's to prevent the Russians and Chinese from gaining access to top secret programs, right? Like that's a valuable skill and it's an important job to do. I just don't think that. I think he's just trying to make sure that none of the classified information the government knows about the phenomenon and all that stuff gets out. That's just his job. He's just doing his job, right? So,
Yeah. So I wanted to ask you more about psi phenomena because I think that's one of the things that you explored the most in your channel, and I'm very interested to know what your overview of it is really. What do you think about remote viewing? What do you think about the theurgy, environment manipulation, manifestation, all of these things that I've had some experiences personally with them that I'm still trying to find out what makes them tick, what makes them real. Because for me, it was very real. But I don't know if you've ever had experience with that, but I would like to get your overview on psi phenomena in general.
so it's real, and it's people use it to shame other people because that's just systematically what the government wants because the population quote unquote wakes up, right? There's a threat for like destabilization, right? Particularly for the powers that be. If everybody realized that they could, remote view meetings in Langley, Virginia, right, our security could be imperiled, right? So I understand from that standpoint where the government might be coming from. However, the reason they've been so cagey on this stuff is it's all interconnected, right? This is the problem that Jim Semivan was talking about, the indigestibility of it, right? It's just the reality that we see is not the actual reality. It's just what our perception, just what our basic perceptions, our basic senses perceive in a way that allows us to be very like barely viable organisms that can survive, right? But there's a lot of other things out there that we are not aware of. In terms of remote viewing, it's real. And it's real because the government spent $20 million on it and did it for over 20 years, 2 decades, and very likely continues to do it in private or by contracting others to do this, part of the thing. So right now I also have like a contract, like I, have a contracting role at Future Forecasting Group, and I'm an analyst for a remote viewing team, and we do a weekly target every week, 52 weeks a year. So, and I've seen that, it's not going to be 100% all the time, but it's been remarkably consistent. As an example, we just did, again, my team just gets an eight characters. That's all they get. They get 8 characters. And then in less than a week, they produce, a bunch of written output, and I analyze it and correlate it and put it together. But this week we just did the future selection of the Dalai Lama, right? And these guys were remote viewing, like they remote viewed the Oracle pool, the Oracle Lake, which I had no idea about. It's just this viewer just drew something like it's like all these people are looking into this lake and they're seeing visions and this and that. So I just did a Google search and I'm like, holy crap, he just drew Oracle Lake. He didn't know what he was looking for. But I see it on a weekly basis. I know it's real. There are other psi phenomena that's real. And what I don't want to say I encourage people to do this because it just depends on how comfortable they are, because you will do some stupid stuff that you don't realize it's stupid. And
like you make contact with something that you don't want to make contact with, but you don't know.
Like perform an exorcism in someone's dreams and you don't realize you performed an exorcism until you tell somebody who's like deep into the occult and they say that like you successfully performed an exorcism, and the risk of that is contagion and your problems could become that person's problems. But good on you for doing that. But next time you do that, like, make sure that you build up a psychic reservoir to protect yourself. And I'm like, well, how do you do that? And they're like, well, you say like some novenas, and you use as the kind of the purpose of that is to strengthen your psychic capacity. And I mean, like I told this individual specific aspects of the dream. He's like, oh yeah, you had like this thing forming at your like near your left foot. Yeah, that's usually where they try to enter. Like just
whoa.
Why? So you have to be very careful what you do. And I'm not going to go into that whole story because it's crazy. But if you just look at my episode with Laird Barron, like he's a horror writer who has been plagued his entire life in his dreams by this entity, and he's had siblings who've actually seen this thing in real life. And we just tried this dream experiment and had results. That we have results because we convinced our his subconscious that we were going to fix it. That's possible. It could be as simple as that. Or it could have been theurgy of some sort, because I would pray to God, St. Michael, St. Gabriel before I would try the experiment, right? And it was just, I don't want to go into it because it sounds like I'm a wackadoodle. You just
No.
You can go to my Substack and read about it, or you can watch the very last episode I did with Laird Barron to
so
learn about the whole story.
This leads to my question about belief and like interpretation, because yesterday I spoke about back and forth that I have with Chris Bledsoe, and I have problems with certain levels of interpretation because I'm like, I told Chris, I'm like, do you think it's possible that you being so certain that this is about God is just interpretation and it is something different that you don't know? And he was adamant. He was like, no, this is about God. And I told him I just can't really accept that because it feels to me like all of those terms from back in the day, God, angels, demons, all that shit, are terms that have evolved over time and they're known as what they really are more today instead of what they were 2000 or so years ago. And I just want to ask you though about these entities and all that. And you speak about possession and exorcisms and all that stuff. Do you think that the term demon is used just as an interpretation, but they're just using it because it's the go-to easy word? Or do you actually think that demons are actually real and they have all this connotation that is religious?
So I think they're real, but I also think that that's the name that we gave them, right? For the same reason that Muslims believe in jinn, right? Like that's the name that, for the same reason that like my ancient ancestors in Ireland believe that the Fae were real, right? I think I'm less inclined to think these are all different phenomena. I actually think it's just a different face on the same thing. Like I think there's some level of reality that we barely perceive that is all around us. And whatever these entities are, be they demons, jinn, fae, just that's why they're calling them NHI. They kind of just fit into this thing. Now, a radical hypothesis, and I don't believe this, I want to be clear, but based on like if you assume the thesis of constant government misdirection, imagine that the concept is called panpsychism, and that's that there's consciousness and everything, and there's a kind of bit of manifestation there. But let's just say that these things are conjured up by ourselves, like we're creating them, right? Our fears, um, subconscious terrors, and things like that are being embodied in these what appear to be external entities, but they're not. They're actually we're creating them. If people learn that that was like a thing, and they didn't have like religion and things like that to focus the narrative in one place, the narrative diverges, and then you have absolute bedlam chaos. I'm not saying that's what it is. It's just a theory as to why the government is kind of trying to externalize what many of our internal capabilities are. Now, there could very well be NHI, which I think there are. I just at this point I can't tell you what they. So I do use my own. I'm Catholic, right? I grew up Catholic, so I
Yep.
use that as a mooring to at least just stifle the fear that was beaten into me. Like it's like Pascal's wager. Like if I like involve God in it, then and I try to make sure that my intentions are positive and do no harm, then if I'm wrong, and not wrong, but like if there is a God, I'm not going to be damned for exploring some of these potentials, right? So it's like with this dream thing. I ran two experiments with two other friends where I was like, "Hey, let's just see if I can influence dreams. Let's see if I can go visit your dream." And both of them had horrific nightmares the same night. And so what I started doing is I would pray beforehand, and it would somehow moderate that. Now, was I just convincing my subconscious that because again, these were my friends, right? I didn't have any negative malintent, right? I wanted to
Yep.
like, hey, how's it going, man? Whatever. And one guy's like, don't like again, I never did it without their permission. I would always say, hey, let's try this, let's see what happens. And the same thing happened with Laird Barron, where I'm like, look, I've tried this before. It's worked the last 3 out of 4 times. Let's just try it. I've since interviewed Dr. Stanley Krippner, which that interview hasn't appeared yet, but back in like the 60s, 70s, 80s, he did a bunch of dream telepathy experiments and proved empirically that it's real. Like you can communicate to other people in dreams. So I don't know what question I was answering, but I'm all over the place today, Pavel. I'm sorry.
No, it's good, man. Well, my question is because I struggle still, and I also grew up Catholic, and I struggle still with this interpretation. And I'm just wondering if there's like a sort of baseline language that we can start trying to use. And probably a good example of this is Dr. Dean Radin, who does do that. Like he tries to
Oh, yeah.
find the more scientific explanations for things that are real, but people have been
Right.
interpreting for many decades
Yeah.
and millennia even, you know.
Yeah, he separates it into what? Divination, enchantment, and theurgy.
Theurgy,
Right.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
divination is things like remote viewing, I Ching, tarot, all that sort of stuff. Enchantment is like sigil magic, basically using magic or psychic potential, kind of the same thing, to get an outcome. And by the way, the Catholic Church, that's called prayer. It's literally called, well, no, I mean, prayer, I guess prayer is more theurgy. Prayer is more theurgy. But the magic would be some like creating a sigil and infusing it with a goal and doing all that sort of stuff to affect an outcome. And then the dark side of it, the black side of it, is using it to against on somebody without their consent.
Yeah,
Right?
like
That's
voodoo
what
magic, Santeria, all that stuff, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Now, from my understanding is, from an occult perspective, doing that sort of thing exposed you to 3 to 10 times the effect of what you put on to somebody else. So, you can curse somebody, but that'll come back.
Yeah.
That could come back at you 3 to 10 times.
Karma is a bitch.
Yeah. It's not. Again, I'm just relaying. I haven't had any experiences specifically related to that, but I think the point I was saying earlier is, I think it's okay to experiment with some of this stuff. I would experiment with theurgy last, right? I wouldn't mess with that because you really don't know what you're dealing with. And then obviously, I would avoid, the black side of this thing. And even then, I'd be very, very cautious. You also mentioned manifestation, right? So, and you're kind of also talking about a spiritual or religious perspective. I think there's, in the distant long run, there's a physics that explains all of this. I think what we call religious, there is but I think our scientists today are far too arrogant to see that we're thousands of years away from getting to that answer. Right? I think it's way, 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 way beyond where we are right now. But when you talk about manifestation, right, you can see a mechanism for that, right? Which is the double slit experiment, right? If you're looking at it, you see it, the waveform collapses.
Yeah.
I think you can actually shape your reality. And I was just watching some random video today about, like, if you want to manifest your goals, don't tell anybody.
Yeah.
But
think about them often. Visualize them often.
Right. But the reason that you don't tell anybody is that they have a vote over how reality goes. So if you're the only one shaping your own reality, no one else can interfere with it. Right. At least, you see where I'm going there. Now, I don't know if that's the case, but in my personal life, that's certainly been true.
Yeah,
right. If I just kind of have my own goals and I don't tell anybody about them, I will be more successful than if I like broadcast it and then try to make it happen.
Yeah.
So
I agree there.
Yeah.
And it is for me, just to piggyback on what you just said, you mentioned that this is really about us understanding that everybody has the capability to shape their own reality, and the powers that be don't want to make that public because it would disrupt the status quo completely. I agree there. I think that the biggest secret here is not that we're in contact with any type of entity. That's been happening for millennia. The real secret that they've been trying to keep from us is what we're capable of. And for me, a good example of that is the 1960s, when consciousness was starting to reach a certain level that was getting out of the control system, and then they
And then
just fucking
they criminalize
just like
psychedelics
that.
and
Yeah,
yeah.
that for me was a key moment in history that gave us a good example of what the control system is capable of when things are not going their way, I think.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And that's why they spend so much energy and time on narrative control,
Yeah,
right? They want everybody's collective psychic energies marching toward the same beat of the drum. You know, and one could argue for good reason, right? Because if people start to, if what we're talking about is true, if that's the way
yeah,
reality truly works, you could destabilize it if everybody's constantly conjuring up wild, crazy, stuff everywhere, and you have a panpsychic collapse, right? So I don't. All I can say is just experiment it on your own, and excuse me, avoid theurgy unless you're just you're a Muslim and you're you know doing your daily prayers, or you're a Catholic and you're doing, like, I think that's safe enough. But try to safely experiment with this within your religious tradition, right?
yeah,
Pray like in the case of being Catholic, I'll pray before I do something. I'll make sure that I have the highest intent. And sometimes weird stuff will happen. Like sometimes you can say, "Hey, like I'm sitting out here. Can you just show me a sign?" And within seconds, like a raven will fly right over your head and squawk at you, like 5 feet above your head, like stuff like that will happen,
yeah, yeah.
like
Some really
in a
weird
really
stuff.
weird way. Yeah,
Some really weird stuff has happened to me in that respect, and it happened after. I think that's something. There's something to going through a traumatic experience, like a near-death experience, or something similar to that, that opens you up to those types of experiences. And
it's
after
easier
my
to
near
dissociate. It's
yeah,
easier to dissociate. That's the
after my near death experience, there's been two instances where I avoided getting shot by like just a couple of minutes. Somebody was killed where I had my car parked right there, and something told me to move my car at that specific moment, and it was really strange. And then the other one was I was driving, and there was a stop sign, and there was a car in the middle, and there were two cars in each of the lanes. And logic would tell me that I had to like park my car right behind the car in the middle, because and right before I was going to stop there, something told me just move to the side. and
Yep.
and and it was like I just moved, and like 10 seconds later, bro, a car just smashed into that car in the middle. And I was like, thank you. Like I was so fucking freaked out. It was so weird. And that shit keeps happening to me. It's very strange. And it didn't happen before my near death experience as often. There are a couple of dreams that I had that are really strange before that, but it's as if it just opened me up to everything. And it was and when I speak about this, I know that I sound fucking crazy, but it's real. It's happened to me. So,
Probably the best attitude is like, I don't care what people think. Like I'm a 50-year-old man. I don't give a shit anymore. Right?
yeah,
Like you don't have to believe this stuff. It's not on me. If you don't want to believe it, that's totally fine. It's just at this point in my life, I've seen some stuff, and that leads me to believe. Like I'm sure you've had, like you're talking about instances of precognition. I've had dreams like that, and I just
yeah,
record them. Like I'll write them on my channel in the comment section. I've since started a Substack to record them, and then like 6 months later, they'll come true. Right? It's just it's not often, but those dreams have a flavor. There's something to it. What
yeah.
what it is, I don't know, but it's real. It's certainly real.
We're trying to find out. That's what we're doing here, right? I think that's what you're doing on your channel as well. Uh, explore the unknown like that. Um, can I ask you about the current movement? And I know that we've already kind of touched on this, but do you think within that movement, there's people that actually do care about getting the truth out, like people like Burleson, Burchett, Luna, or is it all kayfabe? What's your sense of what they're trying to do, and what is your sense on the recent releases that have happened? Do you think there's something meaningful there, or do you not have any faith in the whole process at all?
I don't have faith in that process. I can see the narrative already, right? Like the first few things, and most of the stuff is on like plasmas, right? So what they're doing, trying to do, is they're trying to conflate, even with the Tedesco brothers, right? That was the Jersey drone stuff that they saw. For the most part, was like plasmoids, right? Now there was stuff outside of that, but most of it was plasmoids. Never any biological entities. There was evidence of like a footprint once. It was more like more akin to a Bigfoot sort of sighting or Sasquatch sighting, but um and I don't doubt any of their research, by the way, but it's just because it's so instrumented, they're focused on the plasma side.
Yeah,
And then if you look at all the drops, there's this overemphasis on orbs, plasmas, right? And then the third shoe to drop was this Burke's study about, these are dusty plasmas that are given off that are highly correlated with meteorites. So basically, these meteorites come into the atmosphere, they split off this plasma, and then it gets caught up in dust in the atmosphere, and they form these spheres. And then these spheres interact with other spheres that appear to be 2 to 3 sphere lengths away, right? That give the illusion of structure. So it's just they're already taking us in the direction of, oh, it's just ball lightning, just ball lightning. That's all. What's ball lightning? Don't worry about that. That's just dusty plasma. They're already
yeah,
moving in that direction. Now, do the senators and like Congress people know that? I don't. I don't think so. But it is most certain. There's 100%. 100% of it is controlled. Even the
yeah,
whistleblowers are controlled. 100% of it is controlled. Um, and there are those of us who are trying to kind of figure out what's going on, and like we've all been influenced by someone who's on the take for almost certain, right? And you just have to. The way that I navigate it is it's like Schrodinger's cat, right? You can neither believe nor disbelieve, right? It's very Fordian. You kind of have to. It's not binary, right? It's
yeah.
very analog. You just have to kind of not put too much stock into any one thing and only rely on things that you have personal experience with. And even then, you could have somebody doing voice to skull, right? And putting stuff in your head. And you might think it's a mystical experience, but it's some device that was invented in the 1960s that some intelligence person is using. So,
Well, in my case, in 2006, because of psychedelics, I experienced what I think might be telepathy with another two people. I think we spoke about this on your show.
yeah, yeah,
Um, for me, that is about the only thing that and all of those experiences that I told you with my near death experience too, that I personally experienced, that I know that they were real because I lived through them, and I also asked for corroboration on people. My mom is really freaked out about that guy getting shot about 2 minutes after I moved my car there. She was like, "Whoa." She thinks that it was my grandma who was protecting me, but there are other people that I've talked to about this, and they're like, "Oh, that's your guardian angel," or "Angels do that," or stuff like that, and no explanation really sits well with me yet. I
right.
don't think they know what happened, but everybody has their own ideas of what might have happened. Um, but it feels to me like for me, what seems real right now that I've experienced is that, and I gotta count. I do believe more an experiencer and whatever they experience, even though it may be also interpretation, than a government head. And I think we agree
Of
there too,
course,
right? Yeah,
of course. Like I know people like Christopher Robbins met um, Chris Mellon before. right? Chris Mellon's well aware of people like him, but he never talks about them,
Yeah.
right? Like we don't really talk about, although at that disclosure event, they did mention that we are in the midst of it, and they actually hired psychologists to basically monitor what the population's um, response would be to disclosure. And the first part was, I thought, like a very, very keen. Like you need to talk directly to people. You can't beat around the bush and stuff like that. Otherwise, it causes distrust and all the obvious stuff. The thing that they put up that gave me a little bit of concern is that because there's multiple psychologists on this, so I imagine that one of the psychologists focused on more of a capacity analysis, right? Like how many mental institutions are there? If X% of the population goes batshit crazy, do we have enough capacity to handle all these nut jobs that go into the into the can to deal with the ontological shock? And the answer that they found there was no, that like they're already like near capacity, and so we're gonna have to go much slower in terms of managing this process, right? I didn't like that because it felt very much like the horse shit that they paraded with flatten the curve with COVID. It was like COVID analysis 2.0, right? Or pandemic analysis 2.0. I'm like, come on, guys. Now, what they didn't say, but when I talked to, what's his name? Colin Kelleher, right? He has like a epidemiological model for the phenomenon, right? Where you have an R naught, and I think it's like the R naught Skinwalker was like 3. So
Yep.
if that's a real thing, there might be some element like that they're taking into consideration, right? Like the more people that are connected to this thing, it just spreads and could
It's
cause mass
contagion,
hysteria.
right?
Right. It could be contagion with mass hysteria, like people with like wolfmen dogmen appearing outside their home, menacing them.
Or
They
dino
go
beaters.
crazy. Yeah, or just weird. Well, even what did Lakatsky saw? He saw the cover of Tabular Bells, right? And you know what Tabular Bells? You know what that song is, right?
No,
Have you ever seen The Exorcist?
I have not.
So it's that song. It's like I can't do it properly, but it's the theme song to The Exorcist.
Oh yeah, wing, 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 something like that.
No, it's like
Oh, that's Psycho. Sorry, that's Psycho. Sorry.
yeah. Oh man, this thing is like it turns itself on with AI tracking, and then yeah. Anyway, but that's what he saw, which is like a fancy way of saying it's demonic, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, it's pretty creepy if you kind of put those things together. But what's your? I'm going to throw a question at you. What's your view on Bledsoe? Like, what's going on there? There's a lot of weird stuff with the lady. Like the intelligence community is
I was
very aware
about
of the
to ask
lady.
you about that though. What do you think about that? But let me tell you my perspective on that because I've been very critical of his kid, who seems to be like off his rocker in many respects.
Pavel,
Because
I never heard the word oracle. I never heard orb until Ryan said something
yeah.
about it. Like that shit should be trademarked,
Be careful,
right?
man. They're gonna send you a cease and desist or something. No, with Chris, honestly, I think that he went through something real, but I
Yeah.
think that he has interpreted it as a religious thing. And I've told you, I've had this back and forth with him, that I have no problem talking about because I'm very transparent like that. I think he's a good person, but I think that the people around him are the problem. And I'm not just talking about the intelligence people that have been swarming him since the beginning, who I think may be using him to like push that narrative, especially the more religious side of it. But I think that there's also this evolutionary trait that humans have, where they see something that goes beyond what they can explain, and they instantly slap the deity, religious deity,
Hmm.
label to it. And for me, there's been many different cautionary tales in the past, like the Raelian movement, or the Heaven's Gate cult, or
By the way, those
different
guys
things.
keep reaching out to me.
Don't pay attention to them, please.
Well,
They're
look,
crazy.
I try to keep an open mind about everything. I try to talk to everybody. So I haven't responded because I don't know jack about it. It just seems a little it seems a little loopy, but that doesn't mean it is. Which I mean, like, yeah, I'm still struggling with that one. I
Turned
know it's
into a sex
on the
cult.
extreme.
And it's a weird
Uh,
thing, dude. It almost always goes to sex, which is fucking weird. Um, there's multiple examples, and I just fear that this like cultish idea that Chris Bledsoe is some sort of second coming of something that a lot of people seem to believe at this point. That's what worries me, because it goes down the same path as these other cautionary tales, and it never ends well. So that's what I worry about. I don't worry about Chris Bledsoe having some scheme or plan to, like, indoctrinate the population. I
I
think
think he's genuine. I think he's a
but
genuine
but
human
but I
being.
think that that still happens organically without him even
Yeah,
realizing it. And that's the problem. The problem is the rest of the environment surrounding him, not him, really. Because there's a lot of people like him. He's not special, really. There's a lot of
yeah.
people that have gone through this throughout history. And right now, I've been talking to a couple of people who also claim that they speak to the lady, but they have a different interpretation of what she is. So what is the lady? That let me take it back to you. What do you think that is? Do you think that's just like an archetype that people see through different lenses, or
No, I
what
think
is
it's
it?
real. I think it's
Okay.
real. I think it's a real entity. Um, I'd have to check the map again, and I'd have to check other locations. But a lot of these activities, particularly the dark ones, happen in areas with negative magnetic anomalies. This is like Steve Mira's research. Are you familiar with that?
A little bit, yeah, a little bit.
So there's actually on Google Earth, there's an app you can download. It's called eMag, not map, but like a skin that overlays negative magnetic anomalies, and you can check certain places on the planet, like all places on the planet. And I just did a live stream with my on my channel last Saturday, and literally just opened it up to the peanut gallery. Hey, which place you want me to check? And knowing what I know, they would throw out places that are like creepy or problematic, right? So I'll give you an example, like Baltimore, right? You know how dark that city is with all the crime and like hopelessness and stuff like that.
Edgar
It's
Allan
over
Poe.
an extremely negative anomaly,
Yeah.
right? Like highly negative nanoteslas of that region. Um, Edwards Air Force Base, Los Alamos National Labs, places where they make really dark weapons. I'm trying to think other like dark places that we found that just showed up. But anyway, I think I'd have to like go back and check the transcripts and some of my discussions with Steve Mira. But I think this entity has been seen throughout history in a variety of forms, also described as Marian apparitions,
Apparitions.
right? So like Guadalupe Hidalgo, or sorry, Our Lady of Guadalupe, which is also based loosely on like Aztec goddess as well, which is like
Yep.
the blue lady or something like that.
Donatzin.
Well, let me tell you a quick story. So I've also talked to other people who've experienced the lady, like John Majorowski. I don't know if you know him. If you don't, you
Yeah,
should
I
you
know.
should
I
look
know him.
him up.
Yeah. He wrote a book recently about bloodlines and, experiencers. Yeah, I know about him.
So he had an experience with the lady. She showed up on his lawn, flanked by two hooded figures in black, and she offered him a sword. And then, as soon as he touched it, he had all these flashbacks where he's just like mowing down people, like killing, like blood, 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 blood. And he turned her down. He's just like, again, I'm just repeating this. But like a week or so after I did that interview, I had a dream where I was in somewhere in like it felt like a park in Los Angeles. And I was just kind of walking across this open space, and this lady in blue shows up, just like flashes into existence. And I have a kind of feeling of awe. And then I look down, I look back up, and she's gone. And then I ask, like, did anybody see that? And nobody saw it. And then somebody's like, no, I think Louise saw that. So I don't know any Louises or anything like that. So I talked to Mark Stavish. I just told him about this weird dream. And he's like, yeah, that means like warrior.
Whoa. Damn.
So then the next week I go sit down for this interview, because I did look it up. I'm like, what is the blue lady? What is this? And I got exactly what you're talking about. Our Lady of Guadalupe. And then what's her name again? It begins with like a T or something. Or
Fatima.
No, not Fatima.
Tonatzin.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's fun fact. That's actually my wife's name.
All right. So this synchronicity thing with this exact topic has been like, we just witnessed one, right? So a week later, I go on to that. If you watch the beginning of that, I don't know if he edited it out or not. I haven't had a chance to watch it yet. The Mark Gagnon interview. At the very beginning of the interview, I look up on his wall, and there's a picture, not a picture, but like a tapestry or something like that of the Virgin Mary. And I said, which Marian apparition is that? And without skipping a beat, he's like, oh, that's Our Lady of Guadalupe. Like, just so I immediately called it out. I'm like, this is weird. So whatever this thing is, it's real, and it somehow influences humanity. I don't know if it's in a positive or a negative way, but it's usually associated with times of like great bloodshed, right? So Fatima was like 1917, right? Where that
the First World War.
Yep. And then Our Lady of Guadalupe was like, what, 1531, something like that, when basically afterwards the native peoples were all eventually just completely wiped out, right? Yeah. So I think the intelligence community knows that, and I think it freaks them out, and I think that's why they show up to try to contain and control, who he talks to and some of the prophecies that he sees. But I don't know if it's good or bad. My working theory, okay, and this is just a working theory, I don't necessarily believe this, is that it's some emanation of the superorganism that is Earth. And, we are good for the Earth in some ways and bad for the Earth in others. And I think now it's preparing for a harvest. And that's when it usually shows up. So I think that's why it freaks out the intelligence community. Again, just a theory.
Yeah. You know what's funny about that? I've been following a case that has to do with a number of people around the world who claim to be channeled by deities from different religions. And I was part of a group chat just out of curiosity, because I was really curious about whether these people were just full of shit or not. And I was there for a couple of months. And I spoke to a number of people who were part of this chat, different deities, like some of them were from the Zoroastrian tradition, some of them from the Greek tradition, some of them from the Catholic tradition. They claim, and they don't go like, oh, I was channeled by this entity and I am the descendant or the reincarnation. No, they didn't say that. They were like, I lost track of time. I don't know what happened. Somebody who was there with me said that I started speaking about stuff that they didn't understand, and I just want to know what this is about. And when I was in that sort of trance state, I said things about this religion and this deity, and it was a strange phenomenon that I was like, this is interesting. I got to look it up. Chris Bledsoe was part of that chat. I never spoke to him directly about it, but he was part of it, and he occasionally like responded to some questions from people. But it was a really diverse sort of group. There were people from Japan, people from Europe, people from South America, people from the intelligence community in the US, in the UK. It was a really strange thing that happened. And I just wonder what that is. Like, if there's this phenomenon is like fucking with people's heads, or if there really are really old entities that have masqueraded as, gods or goddesses. And I didn't get too far with it, but it caught my attention that a lot of that phenomenon that I was trying to research does fall in line with a lot of what Peter Levenda and Tom DeLonge talk about in Secret Machines Gods. And it's really strange. It's a strange sort of correlation that I found. What do you think
What do
about
they
that?
say in that book? Because I've read War. I haven't read Gods. What did they say?
They say
in
that a lot of the different mythologies throughout history are essentially the same entities, but they've been reinterpreted throughout time, like
Yeah.
the Anunnaki, then the Vedas, the Greeks, the Greek gods, and all of that, and that they're essentially the
Yes, it's like
same.
Sophia. It's like Sophia and the
Yeah,
lady and
yeah,
Athena and
yeah, yeah,
yeah. I think there is, like, this is Jungian archetypes to some extent.
yeah,
It could just be it's like a program. It's a mask that, again, or the Earth's superorganism, like the superorganism runs when it's getting ready to do a big purge, right?
yeah. It's about to get dicey.
Yeah, but I mean, it could also be why governments try to preempt it by injecting their populations with things. You know what I mean?
I mean, we could talk about Puharich and the whole technology that he was part of. Like, essentially, he co-created MK Ultra, and it feels like some part of that could be just like frequency technology that they used
Yeah,
back then to influence people's heads. And right now, funny enough, DEWs are now like in the front and center with the
oh yeah,
United States
directed energy
government,
weapons.
you know, and it feels like there might be some correlation with Puharich and his work and whatever DEWs are right now. It feels that way
Yeah, I think we've had directed energy weapons
for a
forever,
long
right? Or
time.
not,
Yeah,
yeah, not forever, but for a long time. Yeah.
yeah,
Um, I mean, you can control, like, with infrasonics, right? Like, you can't hear infrasonics, but you can, by blasting somebody with infrasonics, you can induce fear or hallucinations, or actually, yeah, I think you can induce hallucination. That's why a lot of people who go to visit Big Sur see the Dark Watchers, or that's one theory, right? Like these 9 foot tall being, like shadow being type entities that are standing on the cliff sides, looking out into the Pacific Ocean. But the theory is that just the way that the shore is shaped and the cliffs are, and the way the water impacts them, like it just generates a lot of infrasonic sound, and that causes people to experience fear and to hallucinate. Do I believe that? To some extent, I wouldn't be surprised if that. I mean, that certainly is going to impact the environment a little bit, but um, you could certainly generate weapons using that. I mean, the government has chemicals called like cadaverine and fecaline that it'll spray on people, right? And I mean, you can imagine what those two things smell like, right?
yep, we
So
do. And some other correlation that I found though is they keep saying that there is some sort of preparedness for something that may be coming or not. But I still tell them, it's like, dude, you just have to move to a different location in the world, and the world is ending there. Like, Venezuela just suffered 2 major earthquakes, and there were thousands of people who were affected, thousands died. Um, so that's just like kind of relative. I know that there's been like periods in history where there's actually been a global wide cataclysm that ended all life as we know it. But this shit is happening all over the world every day. Like the world is ending for somebody every day,
right,
you know?
right.
So that's a little relative to because they keep saying like, oh, these entities show up when there's something that's about to happen. It's like, motherfucker, have you been to Gaza or seen what's happening in Gaza right now?
Yeah.
The world
Yeah.
is ending
Yeah.
there, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And the other thing is they lie a lot too,
Yeah.
right? So on predictive things like that, unless it's actually by a human, if it's some whisper by some entity that you can't verify, like you're probably being deceived, right? Or
Yeah.
you're probably being influenced in a way that's not to your. Because the other thing too is it generates fear, and are these things fear feeders? I don't know.
That's a great point. And
Right?
it
Like
feels yeah.
it,
And
it certainly helps feed that for sure.
yeah. So before we leave, I want to ask you, what do you think will happen over the next decade or so when it comes to understanding the nature of reality? Do you think that humans or the population at large might have an opportunity to at some point take control of it? Or do you think that the powers that be are just way too strong and we're never going to get a whiff of what reality is?
In individual pockets, people will certainly learn more. In terms of like a top-down dissemination of information, that's never coming. In fact, it's gonna be less and less and less. Like if you just look at the direction things are going, right? Like there are people who are already like sawing down flock cameras. The fact that these things are popping up everywhere in like nearly desolate parks, these things are popping up. Why? Right? You
To
also
keep
have
us
a.
under, to keep an eye on us, on everybody.
It's a digital. Yeah, it's like a dog. It's like a digital fence dog collar, right?
Yeah.
That's what's being set up. They're building these like everybody was all about climate change, right? You got BlackRock with their um, what's that ESG, like the big ESG pushes about environmental sustainability. But then the moment we need a data center, oh, fuck it. Like, yeah, we need more power. We need to like reopen all these nuke plants. We like it's exactly the same thing that happened with masks during BLM, right? So like, okay, so I maybe climate change is bull, or at least the extent of climate change is bullshit, right? Climate's always going to change, but that's what that tells me. It's like it was important to you, and while you deprive us of like basic air conditioning, but the moment you need water for data centers, right? It's suddenly like totally okay to build these massive things that like destroy nature and break humanity's spirit. Yeah, totally okay now. We need to do that, right?
Yeah, the
So
reality of it is that climate is linked to the moon and the sun. I think that's fair to
yeah,
say,
yeah, it's like Milovsky cycles, or I can't remember what the name of the. It's like it's definitely mainly related to the sun, right? Like it's
Yeah,
so like if the sun decides to like freak out, like we're
we're
toast,
cooked. Yeah,
literally,
yeah,
right?
yeah. um, Man, some people might think that we're being like Debbie Downers on this, but I think we're just being realistic, if I'm honest with you. There's a lot of
After the
people that,
pandemic, I like stopped trusting institutions entirely. Like
yeah,
that
I don't
that
think
was
you're
that was
alone there.
yeah, that's what like especially like I got those 2 shots and like, thank God I didn't get any more. But there are people who got like 17 boosters. Like what are you like
Yeah, I got 2 shots
the,
as well. And
the
something that's
excess
really funny?
yeah.
My mom is a doctor. She had she was in control of a hospital here in Tijuana when the pandemic hit, and she was the front line, right? And um, something really weird that has been happening that I do understand because my mom was like inside when it happened, is that when all of these vaccines that arrived here in Mexico, I'm not gonna beat around the bush. They did save a lot of lives here in Tijuana and in Mexico in general, But something really strange that did happen is that adverse reactions were more prominent in Five Eyes countries and not in other countries, which is really strange. And my mom, I was just asking her, I was like, were there any like unusually adverse reactions to vaccines in Mexico? And she looked it up. She spoke to people from the Secretary of Health office because she has access to that. And she was like, no, but that is happening in like England, New Zealand, the US, Australia. And I'm like, whoa,
You know
that
why,
is
right?
very strange.
I got a theory for this. You
Genetics,
know why?
genetics.
Yeah, but you know why those countries would be targeted, right?
I'm not sure. Not sure.
We use more energy per capita than the rest of the world does, right?
Interesting.
So if you're like trying to maximize the bang for your buck, you're gonna wipe out people in those areas. Import people who are far cheaper to maintain, and you can treat more like slaves, and they won't rebel. Because you're also attacking also the most individualistic cultures, the ones most capable of resistance to a digital prison. Again, it's just a theory, but that would be why. I mean, why do you think they would be? Because it was higher percentage of Neanderthal DNA too, right?
Anything I say about this, I think would be just speculation on my part. I'm just telling
Yeah,
you
that's fine.
what
Yeah,
I can confirm from my mother's perspective because she still is an important figure in medicine here in my city. And she was also puzzled by that. She was like, this is really strange. And she also turned her back on pharmaceutical industry and all that after the pandemic hit because I mean doctors who were not in on it, they pretty clearly realized what was happening, and it was like uh, zero trust for the pharmaceutical industry right now from people like my mom and my father, who's also a doctor. Um, and they all saw it coming like that, and it was like, and they can't really say anything publicly like that because they go after their careers. It's happened
right.
multiple times already. So yeah,
Well,
very
well, why do you
strange.
think? Why do you think those like countries at higher rates?
I,
Speculation,
I
pure spec, as they say on
I
Julian Dory.
I would think it has to do with genetics. They targeted some kind of genetic aspect of it. The reason why, speculation. What you said makes sense to me about the energy consumption per capita. That makes sense to me, and it also makes sense that well, if you want to get too deep into it, um, the underlying battle of the superpowers, I think it's right at the basis of all of this. And when I say superpowers, I'm not just saying China, Russia, and the U.S. I'm also talking about Israel. You know, because it's you have to include Israel in this conversation. It's and I know it's frowned upon. I know that people get attacked instantly when they say this, but it's pretty evident, bro. It's impossible to ignore at this point, right?
Right. Well, but what would be Israel's motivation to poison its? Let me reframe this. What would be the parasite's motivation to poison its host?
I am not sure. I'm not sure. What do you think?
I think I think the powers that be above nation state levels, um, this was an organized homicide. And I think that the purpose of it, number one, was to target a bulge, like a demographic bulge, right? The aging part of the population, because most viruses target the weakest in the population, but this one oddly only targeted the old. Usually you have something that targets the young and the old, right? Like zero children died of the actual virus. So I think it was genetically engineered. Number one, to do that. Number two, to create enough junk in your body so that they had a delayed fuse
Hmm.
for the population, so that people are just it just reduced life expectancy for everybody that took it. Now, how much I don't know, but I think that was the point, and I think the reason you saw it in those particular countries was that, again, as I said, they have the highest energy consumption per capita, and it's also going to be the first place that AI takes off. So you can afford the loss in population because you'll have kind of the bots taking over. The other thing that, where was I going with this? Yeah, just give me say what you're going to say, because I'm like, I lost.
I think it has to do also with social engineering, because what you said about them, the more sociopathic class or psychopathic class going underground if something happens or when something happens. I think it also has to do with that. Well, famously, Matthew Brown said this phrase, they can fuck off to their bunkers. That I felt it in my fucking bones, bro. And it's something that I've been struggling with or against for a long time. I don't think that the population, if they're aware that this is happening, this social engineering, I don't think they will allow for these people to go hide in their bunkers, man. And
they
I know that
they might not. To be fair, they might not even make it that far. The way things are going.
I don't think they will. I don't think they will, honestly. And this is why, but like people like us are like screaming at the heavens and trying to, point towards the wrongdoers, the actual wrongdoers. And as long as we're not censored more than we already are, I think that there's a slight chance that we might stop them in their midway through their bunkers.
Yeah, I mean, the problem is the way things are developing, like the digital. Again, I don't know what the ultimate aim is, but these flock cameras is just like the latest thing, the latest inversion. And then you also have AI doing all this crazy stuff. Even voting at this point is fake, right? Like it's obvious. Like we just had a mayor that like burned down half of Los Angeles, and like still was ranked number one in the last mayoral race. It's like I can't, like, you can't be that incompetent and expect to, like, it's all fake. It's all fake, right? So, but the thing is, people are still buying into the system, and they're still paying taxes, and they're still kind of so distracted by high prices and just trying to survive.
The internet.
Yeah, before they know it, they're going to opt into a digital prison in 15-minute city. And at that point, just wait until they wait to see what happens with the currency. When you have programmable money, like
they're already doing it here in Mexico, bro. The president announced it like a couple months ago that the goal is to end cash payments. And I'm like, fuck you. I'm not doing that. People are not going to listen to that shit. I don't think. It's like, dude, do you understand that people live by on a day-to-day basis? They can't plan ahead. We need cash to get by. That's impossible. It's not going to happen. I don't think.
Well, Pavel, if you just turn in your cash, we'll give you 10x that in our new programmable currency. What do you like? What's the average person going to do with that?
Oh, that's true.
Here you go.
That's true.
Right? And then like 2 years later, you say, something negative about Israel, and suddenly like you can't have steak for a year, right? Even though you have the money in the account. I mean, that has literally already happened, right? Like Kanye West got debanked for saying something anti-Semitic. I don't encourage people to say anti-Semitic things, but criticizing a foreign country for genocide behavior is not an anti-Semitic thing.
It's not. And speaking against Netanyahu's regime is not anti-Semitic. That dude is a genocidal maniac. It's just what it is, right? And his entire cabinet is as well. And I'm always going to speak against that. I have Jewish friends who are against that guy, who are good people.
Well, that's the other thing they're trying to do, right? They're trying to conflate anti-Semitism with anti-Zionism. and then
Yeah.
thereby scare the crap out of, American and Mexican and, diaspora Jews into wanting to like flee to Israel and sorry, and thereby feed its war machine, right? Because they need soldiers,
Yeah.
and that's the kind of the way it works. Like anti-Semitism is good for Israel because it helps recruit and attract sympathy. The thing is, people aren't buying it anymore, right?
Yeah.
They're just not. So
They're not. Yeah. I knew that we were going to talk about this, Sean, man. Uh, I knew that we were. Thank you, man. I want to ask you one last thing before we leave, man. And I want to thank you for your time and this back and forth. I hope that we can do it again sometime. Uh, what is your like biggest hope or greatest hope for us civilians, us people, for the next 10 years or so? What do you think on the positive side, to end on a positive note, what do you think could happen over the next decade or so?
So I think people are going to learn how to communicate without electronics. So telepathically, psychically, like I think that's what people should be aiming for now, because we're already in a world where it's going to be pretty easy to shape your digital reality. I mean, to some extent, it's already being done, right? So developing a psychic means to communicate. Also, um, learn to be self-sufficient, right? Learn to live off grid. Learn to sustain for your family. Because what I suspect is going to happen is as they increasingly try to enforce this digital prison, and Lynn Buchanan saw this. Like people don't rebel, they just opt out entirely, right? They just stop paying taxes because, again, if you have a government that kills its own citizens systematically, like they may or may not have during the pandemic, right? People are just going to opt out of the system. Like they're just going to stop paying taxes and like cease using
I
communications and
mean,
cease
even today,
benefits.
without the pandemic, there people are already going through it in the US. Like they're basically just running them out of their own homes and shit like that. It's happening still.
What do you mean by running out people out of homes? What do you mean?
Like gentrification and getting them into prison and for stuff that is really stupid. They're getting them in jail like that, destroying their lives effectively. High
Yeah.
rent, high mortgage. And they're doing it systematically to everybody who doesn't have the means, who don't have the means, and have struggled their entire lives like that. And we can see it happening in real time.
Well, even the oligarchs are getting a little nervous about it, right? You saw Jeff Bezos talking about what's it called, universal basic income or something like that. You also see Musk talking about it because
Yeah,
they see the pitchforks, right? And especially like Bezos, like the way that they work people at those Amazon facilities, it's just like it's inhuman. It's completely inhuman. And
yeah.
they're replacing with robots. So I think it's too little, too late. But what did Tim Dillon say on Rogan? It was something like like social
I
media
love
is
that
fake,
guy.
but fire is real, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
And pitchforks, and
yeah,
pitchforks.
yeah, pitchforks are real. So
Yeah,
look, I don't encourage people to do any of that stuff, but what Lynn Buchanan saw is that the government is so homicidal and so negligent that people just start to opt out in the 2040s and go their own way and are very happy about it. Things become much more local.
yeah,
So that's what I think is going to happen. I don't think there will be like bouts of sporadic violence, but just avoid population centers and try to mind your own business. Don't poke the bear. And I think what will happen is people just develop an eye for self sufficiency, be prepared to defend yourself and your family, but learn how to do things on your own. Learn how to, and AI is going to make a lot of that possible. But the question is it going to be so enmeshed in the control grid that you just can't use it anymore, right?
I think there will be rogue AI platforms that are not part of the grid. That's what I think, and we're gonna be able to use those sort of black market of it. It sort of seems like there's going to be like two types of AI, right?
Yeah, it's already there. It's like you can get like
Yeah.
an Olama account and start. And you know, so far, like the mommy kind of aspect of AI, it's really annoying. It's super annoying, but it's not annoying enough yet to have me want to kind of jump. But I probably will at some point.
Yeah. Yeah. Sean, thank you so much for your time, brother. I hope that we can do this again soon.
Oh, absolutely. You got to come back on my show at some point.
Yeah,
And
I'm gonna have Nathaniel soon too, so that's gonna be interesting.
yeah, just make sure you send him some chicken wings in advance. All right, just give him some love.
All right, man. Guys, if you don't know, please go subscribe to Through a Glass Darkly. Where does that name come from, though? Does it come from the movie Through a Scanner Darkly, or where
No,
does it come
there
from?
is a movie. There is a movie called Through. There is like Through a Scanner Darkly, but there's also Through a Glass Darkly. I just always liked the term,
I really
right?
like it, man.
And then there's like another one too that called like the Wine Dark Sea or something like that. Like there's some interesting play on words, but it turned out like I literally just picked it because I liked it. It turns out it's a saying or a verse in Corinthians about seeing the world through a glass darkly, right? And it's exactly like that Plato's cave like stuff that, but again,
Yeah.
I just picked it pure intuition and it has all those meanings, right?
It's beautiful.
Which is absolutely crazy.
I really love it. And guys, please go subscribe. One of the best high strangeness channels out there, in my opinion. So please go subscribe. And thank you, Sean, for a wonderful conversation, man.
Yeah, Pavel, always a pleasure. I love being on the show. Love talking to you. So we will talk soon.
Same.
Brother.
Likewise, bro. Remember, guys, stay curious and inquisitive like Sean, Patrick Hazlett here. Thank you, Sean. Have a good one.
Thank you, brother.
Bye. Remember.
Psicoactivo.
Always.